What is going on, Pirate Nation? Welcome into Jungle Tales, a Pirate Baseball podcast, episode 16, but our first of On Deck, which is our East Carolina opponent preview. The Pirates, of course, beginning action on Friday at Clark LeClaire Stadium, a three-game series with the George Mason Patriots out of the Atlantic 10. And right now to preview George Mason, very excited to have with us the third-year head coach of the Patriots, Shawn Camp. Coach, we appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate you having me on. It's a little bit looks a little bit warmer down there than it is here in Fairfax. We're reaching and ready to get rolling here. About to head out of here around 12 o'clock and head down there to see that side of the world. So we're excited. No better place to open up. Just got a great feel about playing against East Carolina. It's always a great time to kind of see where you're at as a program, and obviously with the success that East Carolina's had in the past, and just kind of see where our program's at.
Yes, sir. Occasionally, we'll be fortunate enough to get one of those 60, 70-degree days for opening weekend. Not the case this year, but as you said, the forecast for Friday is currently 50 degrees and dry, so we'll take it. And talking off the air, I believe you said you have, about a half a foot of snow on the ground there in Fairfax?
Yeah, it was. It's covered in white around here, but it's a little bit of rain the last couple of days. It's kind of gotten that out of the way, but no, it's it's kind of a weird winter for us. I think it's been a weird weather all around the Northeast. But I know that everybody and every college player across the country is just itching and ready. I don't think anybody's worried about the weather. I think they're just ready to get out and go play. I think once the adrenaline starts rolling, I think that people are not going to worry about it's cold or not. I was telling my coaches a couple of days ago, we opened up in Detroit one year and it was like 32 degrees and you could barely feel your hands. But when that adrenaline starts rolling, you don't even feel it. So, again, it's great to kick off, and thanks for having me on today.
Yes, sir. Yeah, nothing like opening day in Detroit, Michigan in late February. But as I take a look at your history with this George Mason program, very similar to Cliff Godwin's association with East Carolina. You played for the Patriots in the mid-'90s. You're a Fairfax native, just like Cliff is a native of Eastern North Carolina, having played for East Carolina in the late '90s and early 2000s. But after a very successful career, with the Patriots, you had a very lengthy professional career as a pitcher in the big leagues, and I think there, even late in your career, you led the major leagues, or at least the league that you were playing in at the time, with 80 appearances. So take us back there to the mid-'90s and playing for George Mason, and bringing it full circle to where you are now, back guiding your alma mater.
I mean, you took it right out of my mouth. I mean, I said this, and I've said it for a long time. And anybody that's ever asked me, I mean, obviously, having my life full circle and being able to start my career here, at 8, 9 years old, walking around the field house here, and just seeing the things change over time, and going on to play a lengthy career, and I really kind of just owe it a lot to this place, and just kind of where it gave me. It gave me a starting point, a starting ground. It taught me a lot about how to be a professional, and I was fortunate to play for a guy that, was Coach Brown, was here before me, 42 years, who, he coached me, Jeff Palumbo, and who now is a tremendous coach at East Carolina with Cliff. And, I just have a lot of respect for a person like Cliff Godwin, who, obviously is a hometown guy there in East Carolina. And, you really look at, you have a lot of respect for people that want to come back and coach your alma mater, because it really means something to you, because you want to leave behind a legacy. And you want to kind of leave it kind of where you want to, where it was left off for you. So I think building that, obviously, and, I've got a road ahead of me that's kind of, bringing great players and just kind of teach them the things that, that I was taught. And, it's not something you do overnight. And I think that's something that, I've learned over the last couple of years. We had a successful run 2 years ago, and then last year we kind of fell short a little bit, and so learning those things as a coach, you learn the highs and the lows. And I think that teaching the players those things, I think it's an incredible thing to understand from my experiences in the highs and lows where I was in my career. And, and just being able to, speak with coaches that were in the same arena as me, as far as kind of coaching their alma mater. So, it's just a great feel. But, obviously with, ECU, I had a really good time when I got out of pro ball. I was able to coach the Agnos boys and Carter Cunningham, and then they got to go down and learned through Cliff and Jeff, and now they're going on to have a successful professional career. So I feel like we've both played a part in their careers. All three of us played a part in their careers, and I think that's just kind of what you want to do. You kind of want to pay it forward for those players. And I think that's what our job is to do. And I said this yesterday on a radio show. Our job as coaches is to be there for our players. And I think that the one thing I've learned in my post-playing career is that, like, I love being around my players. And I think that's the one thing you'll see.
Yeah, you read my mind. That's where I was headed next. That association that you had with Zach and Jake Agnos, and then also Carter Cunningham. Carter, of course, in the Toronto Blue Jays organization. Jake looking to get another shot after being released by the Yankees, and Zach, man, what a job he's been doing. Most recently, with Hartford, with the Yard Goats in the AA ranks of that Colorado Rockies organization.
Yeah, I mean, they're tremendous kids. I was best friends with their father. Unfortunately passed away a couple years ago. But the Agnos' mom tutors my children here locally. She lives right down the road, so I have a really close relationship with them. I have a really close relationship with Carter. I was just down there in November, doing something down there in East Carolina, and I was able to go out and spend some time with Carter. But they're doing well. It's just great to see the success. But really, I mean, obviously, going from high school and the things they were able to learn there in East Carolina, and just kind of learn how to be, not just become great baseball players, but become men. And it's really that's the teaching moments you have in baseball, especially in college. It's like, I always tell players, it's a job, when you get to college, and you got to harness the athletic, the academic, but you got to teach people how to become men. That way, when they get out in the real world, because if it doesn't work out for them, they got something to fall back on, and I think that competitive edge they have playing in a competitive environment and being around people that care about them, it's going to give them a greater space in life. Jake is pressing on the things that he wants to do now. I just spoke with him a couple of days ago. I mean, Jake and Zach used to babysit my children, so that's how close I am with that family. So, it's like full circle, and it's a really cool community that we live in. And it's a great bond that we all have as one. But then again, weekends like this, we can get on the field, we can compete with one another. And when there's a draw, we're still friends afterwards.
As we begin to transition to the here and now in the 2025 Patriots, you mentioned Jeff Palumbo. Jeff was such an excellent player for George Mason back in the early 2000s, 2001 to 2004. His name is throughout those George Mason record books, as yours is. But is that how this series, came to be this weekend? Just that relationship that you have with Jeff Palumbo?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's just a fantastic human being. I mean, first and foremost, I mean, you talk about human beings. I mean, that's the one thing we talk about Jeff. I mean, he's just a great human being. Set aside the fact that he's an unbelievable coach. He has a really good feel for the game. As a pitcher, I mean, he's a guy you wanted to play. You wanted him playing behind you. You know what I mean? So, but he's just a tremendous person. He does a great job from what he does there. But yeah, I mean, I've always had a great relationship with him. And it's kind of stayed over the course over years. And obviously we have a history of just having being alums here. And, that's the one thing, alumni of organizations. And when I say colleges and things like that, it's always cool to be, connected with them. So again, just a great, first and foremost, just a great person.
As I mentioned in the open, this is your third season there as the head coach. In 2023, you went to the NCAA tournament, won a couple of games at that Winston-Salem Regional against Northeastern in Maryland, 36 on the season. And last year, you were picked near the top of the Atlantic 10. Unfortunately, a disappointment. I think you battled some injuries. What do you see for your ball club as you're entering 2025?
Well, I mean, I think we have a fresh group of guys. I think that, on paper last year we were better than the year before. So it's kind of like the tale of two sides. 2 years ago we were really fast, and we relied heavily on our pitching. We had some guys that were, Ben Shields is in AA now. He's probably got a chance to be a fifth starter for the Yankees at some point this year. Connor Eaton was a 95, 97 mile an hour lefty as a freshman that year, who was literally not even in our rotation until I think his first start was at East Carolina on that Sunday. It was a rain out. And for the most part, he did pretty good for the first 4 innings. And then he ran into a little bit of a wild thing in him. So, but he's a tremendous kid. He's now with the Rockies. Chad Gartland that year are pitching, but last year, our offense was incredible, but we could not close out games, and we were winning. I think it was like 9-14 1-1 losses where we could just not close out games. Was frustrating, one thing too, I learned last year as a coach that, we lost our pitching coach on the 26th of December to the Minnesota Twins. And there's one thing you can't do as a coach is you can't multitask. You can't be a coach and a pitching coach. You can't be a coach and an offensive coach. It's too tough to be a manager and a specialty coach, with 35 to 40 players on your staff, because you just run into micromanaging, or you run into situations where you just can't control all those things. So this year I got a tremendous pitching coach, Tommy Winterstein. I've got a great staff. So, we've got a new team. We've got a bunch of guys that can do a lot of different things. We got some fun guys. I know the people in the jungle are going to be messing around with my Canadian in left field, which that's cool. He'll love it. He'll embrace it. We got Quinn Irons. Quinn Irons is returning. I mean, he was a guy that's going to be he'll be a top 8 rounder, who can bang it around the ballpark and can run. We got some speed in the outfield. We got some speed in the infield, and we got a pitching staff that I wouldn't say we don't have the staff that we've had in the last couple of years, but we got some guys that could do. We got more guys that could do quality things, and we got a bunch of strike throwers.
Yeah, I was reading James Quinn Irons, of the outfielder that you referenced. Over the last 2 seasons, he's hit a combined .335, 17 bombs, and driven in 75.
Yeah, I mean he's a specimen. He's 6'5", 250 with 5% body fat. And he runs he runs like a deer. So I mean he's you look out there and he's half the size of a scoreboard. But tremendous kid. Just just Godzilla power. But first and foremost, he's a team player. I can put him in the 1-hole, 2-hole, 7-hole, and it wouldn't matter to him. I mean, I got a bunch of kids that are selfless players that will do anything it takes to make us win. And I think that's one thing about him. But he's a humble kid. He stays true to who he is. With everything out there now with the portal and everything, I mean, people that want to jump ship and things like that. I mean, I think that the one thing for my guys is, they're loyal. And I think that, I think that's what kind of maybe happened a little bit last year where, down there, where some guys that weren't loyal enough as they should have been, when they got it good, I mean, that's what, when people have it good, you're around people that care about you. And I know that, like, especially down there, like with CG, he cares about his players. Jeff, they care about their players. So there's a loyalty factor to those things. So I think these players, they need that. They want that.
Yeah, well said. Coach Godwin is certainly extremely selective about who he brings into the program, and really values those close relationships. And like many coaches, does not like the direction that college athletics as a whole is headed. But that's an entirely different subject for another day. We don't have enough time to discuss all those things. But
no, we don't.
But you referenced James Quinn Irons specifically. Who are another few names that Pirate fans can really keep an eye out for this weekend? I know you mentioned your Canadian left fielder.
Yes, Alberti's a firecracker. He's in left field. He's a fun guy to be around. He's a humble guy. Drew Kennedy's in right field. He's a kid that basically could have played football at Florida State. He's a fun kid. Owen Klein's a new shortstop he's from Barton. He's following in behind the guy that was from Barton, was a 3-year starter for us. Owen Hall he's a fun guy. He's a trip. We just got a bunch of guys that are just really just fun. I don't think they're going to embrace the situation. And I think that's one of these things where it's like, hey, do we want to play in an atmosphere like this? Because it's like, we got some guys, I think one of the best things we ever did, to be honest with you, is the reason I owe East Carolina for the fact that why we went to a regional, why it was so, not want to say easy for us when we went down there and won 2 games, which is the most we ever had in a regional, is because, we started to kick it up real well when we played East Carolina. Although we lost all 3 games there, that atmosphere helped us really participate really when we went down there and beat Northeastern and Maryland in that Wake Forest, Winston-Salem. You know, I mean, those guys had already seen 5,000-6,000 people in a stadium. They didn't care, you know. So I think these things, you know, they set the tone for what college baseball should be. Like I said, it's the benchmark for what college is, you know. And I think that, you know, our guys are going to embrace it, and it's going to be a pretty cool atmosphere.
On Monday morning, East Carolina head coach Cliff Godwin announced the rotation for the Pirates this weekend. Ethan Norby, the talented sophomore lefty who was a freshman All-American last year, he will get the ball on Friday, and then in Game 2, whenever Game 2 is played, it will be a 17-year-old freshman that technically could still be in high school this year, and Sean Jenkins, and then TBA for Game 3. You know, have you announced your rotation? And if so, tell us about those guys.
I told Cliff yesterday that when he called me, I said, hey, I know that Sam Lavin is going to pitch on Friday. Sam Lavin is a kid from St. Olaf, and most people don't know where St. Olaf is. And most people weren't alive. I wasn't even alive when the Golden Girls came about, but that was where the girl in the Golden Girls was from. But it's in Minnesota. So he will get the ball in Game 1 on Friday, depending on how the game goes. And this weekend will be kind of, you know, subject to how the weather treats us, whether we have to play a double dip or we have to play, you know, 2 in 1 day, or it's game. So I think you know, we're going to have a combination of them. We got a kid, O'Hara, that's out of Florida Gulf Coast, that's got tremendous stuff. If it's all clicking. Logan Rumberg last year was kind of an unfair year to him, just because I asked him to do a lot last year. I asked him to close at times, relief at times, go into the second inning, start, like pitch back to back. I mean, it's kind of those things. It's like, you touched on earlier, me pitching that 1 year in 80 games. People don't realize that 1 year in 80 games, I was up in 141 games out of 162 days. 108, you know what I mean? So that's a lot. 41 other times I was up and didn't even pitch in. So it's like those things, they earmark how many times you get up in a game. So, you got guys like, Connor Knox has really come on in the fall, who had a tremendous summer, who really has struggled last year with kind of a lower back issue. He's finally healthy, who has really good pitchability. We got a plethora of young guys that can really do really good things, but they're not experienced enough to kind of lengthen those, roll over those innings. So you're going to see a lot of different arms thrown in a lot of different situations, and it's weekend 1. So there's going to be a lot of TBA, you know what I mean? So we'll see how it plays out, but it's going to be 3 righties. I mean, that's all I can tell you.
Gotcha. Kind of moving on from this weekend in the big picture of your program, I know you also have games 2 with Duke, top 15 opponent, and has consistently been in super regionals over the last several seasons under Chris Pollard, who does such a great job. And then also Maryland and some other quality non-conference opponents in addition to the Atlantic 10 schedule. And tell us about some of those non-league opponents, and then also just the Atlantic 10 conference.
I mean, the A10 is, first and foremost, we'll go down and play Duke during spring break for 2 days. We'll go down there. We'll play on a Tuesday, Wednesday at Duke. We'll play Chapel Hill. We'll be down there on the 29th of April. We'll play UVA in a night game up here. It's always a tremendous time for us to get out on the lights, and it's just, it's a good test for us, and we'll play Maryland. And so it's just kind of every year I kind of like to kind of break it up to where we play. And it's one of those things too, I learned last year, a couple of times I would play a double midweek and it kind of hurt us a little bit. So it's like you get 56 games in a year, but if you're 54, it's not that big of a deal. Some people have to have 56, but you're going to get shortened up a couple games. But I don't want to force those midweek games back to back in before basically late, especially when we got 10 weekends this year, 30 games in conference for the first time instead of 8. We'll open up this year. We don't have as bad of a trips as we had last year. When we got kind of hosed last year, we had to go to St. Louis, Dayton, St. Joe's. I mean, it was just like one after another, just bad trip after bad trip after bad trip. When I say travel wise, this year we kind of host these things, and I think that we play well really well at home in our ballpark, as anybody should. But we more specifically, we play really well in our ballpark. I think that, the A10 is, it had a lot of changes last year. I mean, there was a lot of people that are plucking people out of this conference. I think that I don't want to say St. Joe's. I think they lost 2 or 3 of their starters. I know they lost their pitching coach, to the Baltimore Orioles. I know GW is going to be really tough. They're always really tough. Greg Ritchie does a really good job. He was a big league hitting coach when I was in Pittsburgh there. So it's just going to be the A10 is really tough. I mean, but it's just the difference between the A10 and other conferences is you're going to face some really, really good pitching on Friday and Saturday. And then generally it just kind of drops off a little bit on Sunday. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just simply saying you don't have the Florida State arsenal on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You know what I mean? So, and that's the one difference. And that's why I like to play the Dukes, UNCs. I mean, and then you got East Carolina where they play a lot of different types of baseball. They'll play, they kind of, more or less they play kind of like the way I like to play. I love pitching, speed, and defense. You're going to see a lot of the same characteristics. So, but yeah, it's going to be a great year for us. And I think we're just going to have to learn. But I think for the biggest part for us this year is not to get too high, get too low. I learned a long time ago from Joe Madden to stay consistently average, because if you always stay consistently average, you're never going to get too high. You're never going to get too low. And, because it's just, you're going to be a good player. This is going to be a good team.
Final question for you, Coach. It's been a topic of much discussion here in the preseason is the new bag at first base and some of the issues that is creating. Jeff Palumbo, I know he said, I'll take a wait and see approach just to be positive, but I could see it really causing some issues. I know Cliff Godwin's against it. He thinks that we should have gone with the larger base as the professional game did. What have you seen here early on?
It's going to be, I kind of agree with both. I agree with both Jeff and Cliff. I think that the bag, the color and everything, I think what you're going to find is you're going to find a lot of issues with balls that are kind of up the line where the first baseman has to field the ball. I think you're going to find a lot of avoidance calls. I think you're going to find a lot of, umpires are going to not know exactly kind of how to make that call. It's funny. I'm literally sitting here and it's right in front of my desk because, I know some guys in our conference aren't even requiring it, but, I know that some schools are using it because if you have the option to use it and you don't use it and some player gets hurt, it's like, is it a risk management thing? So it's like, but it's going to cause a lot of replay issues. And that's the one thing that people are going to be concerned about, because you drop a ball, it's going to be the umpire's discretion, where the runner can run. It's just, you hit the orange bag, or for example, if it's an automatic double, you can touch any part of the bag you want. It's like, what if the guy falls down and gets backpicked? There's so many different things, so it's going to be crazy. I like the big bag. The big bag's simple, but again, you're asking the wrong person. You're asking somebody that came up in the era where, hey, if there's a collision at first base, get out of the way. You're also asking a guy that in my career where you didn't go up there looking like RoboCop and you could hang over the plate. And, like that's, there was all the old neck ball down and away pitch, so you never saw somebody come up there. Or, what about the arm pads, where it extends, when you get to first base, you got one that's 6 inches longer, right? And that way, when you slide, it touches the base sooner. It's crazy, but it seems like every year there's something else, right? So we'll see. I'll make do, everybody's got to do it, right? So, but that's why I put in 2 extra cameras, I put in 2 extra cameras for this reason.
Yeah. Another member of the media asked Coach Godwin, do you think that this implementation of the new bag will result in your first ejection pretty early on? And he just kind of laughed and said, well, he said, honestly, he said, I feel sorry for the umpires. He said they've had so much put on their plate that that he does not envy everything they're trying to manage. He's
not wrong. It just gives them one more thing to worry about. It literally does. He's not wrong at all. He's not wrong at all. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Coach, really appreciate your time this morning. You've been very generous. Safe travels to you and the Patriots as you're traveling down to Greenville for the series, and best of luck in 2025.
Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Pirate Nation, that is the third-year head coach of the George Mason Patriots, Shawn Camp. Be sure to follow us on social media at Jungle Tales Pod on X and Instagram, and then on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. We can be found by simply searching Jungle Tales, a Pirate Baseball podcast. Until next time, you've been watching Jungle Tales, and as always, go Pirates.